Welcome, salespeople, leaders, and mental health advocates. I've got a really cool video for you today, and I'm really excited to share it with you. I was speaking to a good friend of mine, an old mentor of mine, Ryan Hiscox. He shared a really inspiring story with me the other day. For those of you who don't know Ryan, he is currently the VP of Sales at Moby2Go, and he's one of my very first sales mentors. He's played a huge part in terms of how I think about mental health and sales, and has supported me throughout my entire sales career. But I'm really excited to have him join me today because he has a really cool story to share about mental health and sales. But Ryan, how's it going, man? How are things?
It's going really well. Today's my birthday, actually.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's a great day to be talking about mental health, to be honest. So yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you carving out time to talk about this topic. It just kind of shows how important it is when you're doing it on your special day. So I guess just to give the viewers a little bit of context here, I know you received some pretty special feedback from a rep that you used to manage back in the day. So I thought I'd just read the message just so people kind of get an understanding of why we're talking about this topic and how cool this story is. So the message you received goes something like this. It says, "Hey Ryan, I wanted to let you know how well I'm doing making big moves. I recently started at a new company, which is awesome because it's a startup backed by a big established company with all the resources I need to be in a good position to succeed. A structured, stable company is just what I wanted. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I spent 9 to 10 months as a BDR, and now I'm an AE that will be running demos, closing deals, and everything I wanted to do. The company wanted people with 4+ years of sales experience, but impressed the president and hiring manager on my team, so they chose me even though I didn't meet the four years of requirement. Ryan, you played a big part in shaping me into the salesperson I am today, and you showed me that it's okay to struggle with my mental health, but still kill it in sales." So when we first kind of connected and you shared this message with me, I was just blown away by how impactful this was. And something that was really cool that came up in our conversation was that during the hiring process and before you hired him, you had actually understood and found out that he had certain mental health issues. So I was really curious to just kind of learn more and hopefully that you can share for others that might be struggling with their mental health and for other leaders, like what made you believe in his potential and make sure that you made sure you got the right management and took a shot on him. It's such a cool story. I'd love to hear more.
Absolutely. And I was really taken back by that message. When you get a message like that unsolicited and it just randomly comes to you, like it really reminds you of, what are the other things besides hitting your quotas that you can be excited about in sales? And for me, this is probably even bigger. But yeah, I mean, let's go back to the interview process, which was kind of unique. During an interview, my style is like, I really just want to get the truth from people. We've all got stories and reasons why we're doing this, but like, what are the real reasons? What's the real truth? What's the hard facts? And in this particular interview, I found this person to be extremely honest, refreshingly honest, frankly. And it's kind of how we identified pretty quickly that there was some type of mental health things that he had been going through or had been experiencing. Things like, trouble with learning in school, trouble like getting through to the next phases of his career, things like that. And one thing I can say is that usually it takes me quite a while to dig that out of people.
Mm-hmm.
But this person was just like kind of open with it and honest. And that made the process that made the interview like a lot easier and a lot more interesting for us to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's always so important. I know when you and I have worked together in the past, you've always done such a really great job in terms of being able to understand everyone's unique motivators, but also really connect from an empathetic standpoint to understand, like you said, what drives them, but how can you really support them? I guess what types of questions were you asking that uncovered some of these learning issues or kind of uncovered some of these these mental health struggles that the rep might have been having. And how did you kind of keep that perspective where it was like not removing judgment from it and actually saying, okay, how can I work with this if I were to hire this rep?
Yeah, really good question. Honestly, I didn't ask any unique questions that wouldn't be already in the list of top 10 best interview questions. I think again, for me, it goes back to when you ask someone a question in an interview, they give you an answer, and it's usually a very surface level answer, kind of like when you're doing a sale.
Mm-hmm.
Trick to any question is you got to ask more questions. And you got to dig deeper. Sometimes people are fairly honest and they give you a more honest answer, but you still need to keep going further and understand, why did they answer like that? Tell me more about that experience. And it's not like you're fact checking them for lies. That's not the purpose. It's more like you really want to understand what makes this person tick. If they're coachable, if you can work with them. And I think a lot of that goes back to, what I actually believe the reality of hiring, the reality of managing a team is like. We often hear this as from our executive team or from the board or wherever you hear it, always hire A players, right? We all want A players. And yeah, I mean, that's a nice fairy tale that you can tell yourself at night that you're just going to hire A players and you're going to look for people with these credentials and worked at this company before, and that's going to make them good and it's going to remove any risk. But the reality is that you're dealing with human beings, and we see it in sports all the time. You can have a payroll like the New York Yankees or find the best players like the Toronto Maple Leafs did recently, and still not have a great performing team.
Mm-hmm.
That's not because they aren't great players, but because human beings have to work together. They have ups, they have downs. You're not going to find a situation where you've hired a bunch of people who aren't affected by life, right? 100%. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So for me, it's less about finding an A player, and it's more about finding somebody who I believe that, I can work with, someone who is honest, someone who's open to feedback, who's open to sharing, maybe even like a little bit understands their emotions a bit more. So the questions are the same. I think it's just what I'm looking for is a little different.
Yeah, well, I think that's something really important that you brought up there was through talking about their experience with learning difficulties and struggling with their mental health and all these different things, they conveyed a lot of the characteristics and traits that sales leaders are really looking for, which is things like being able to understand your emotions, being open, being vulnerable, and just simply putting your trust in someone that you've just met and saying, hey, this is me. That's so genuine and so authentic. That's only going to make them a more authentic and effective seller when they implement those same processes that they're in those same ways, authentic ways in the interview process when they're talking to buyers, which is really cool. And I don't think a lot of sales leaders and hiring managers really pick up on that, to say willingness and openness to talk about mental health is actually going to translate into highly effective selling activities as well.
Yeah. And, it really brings up for me a couple of things. And before I start, I just want to say I haven't figured out the magical formula to hiring. There is no magical formula. There's no silver bullet. I just know that, looking for A players and what the standard criteria has been, that doesn't work. I know that for a fact, right? Mm-hmm. I'm developing different ways, and I have been. That's how I've been hiring for many years. I'm always refining it, and I'm looking for different things that make people the best version of themselves,
right?
And make a team the best version of the team, right? So in this interview, there were two things that really stood out to me, and I kind of just mentioned one: the honesty. The ability for this person to just come out and say what his challenges were, why he hasn't been hired recently by all the interview processes he went through, why he struggled in school. where he thinks that he isn't good enough compared to other people. I thought to myself, like, man, like it sounds like he actually does have some difficulties with this stuff, and learning sales is pretty hard.
For sure.
But if I know how this person feels and he knows how he feels and we can communicate like that, I mean, I think I can help him with that. It's when you bottle up and you don't know and you don't want to talk about it and that comes out in other strange ways in your life that's harder to manage.
Totally.
Right. So even those, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, just even the self-awareness and it really shows how high that EQ is in the individual to be able to identify, here are my weaknesses and here are the areas that I need help with and I'm trying to improve. Like, that's awesome. Like, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And so for as many flaws as this person thought that they had some strengths they weren't even aware of. And to me, that was, so I really appreciated that. And I know how hard it is to be vulnerable and talk about those things in an interview. And typically when people ask for our weaknesses, we have this pre-recorded thing that almost makes it seem like a strength,
Yeah.
I work too hard or whatever. But yeah, that was one thing. That was one major thing where I thought, wow, if I know how this person feels and I know how they can be vulnerable and they're open in a first meeting, like I'm going to be able to communicate well with this person on their weaknesses and coach them through the tough times.
Right. Man, I just love that. That is just like so important. And I just love hearing stories like this. I think something that would be important to learn from you, just any other sales leader that would be saying, okay, this makes sense. I see how this uncovers really awesome characteristics and how this will help me manage and coach them more effectively. I guess I'm curious, like, what would be some of the things that you did from a management standpoint that might have been a little different? Like, how would you tailor your management techniques to this rep compared to maybe someone who hasn't opened up about their mental health, or who may be struggling or not struggling? Like, how did you go approach this rep specifically a little different to make sure that they got the management and the support that they needed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Well, first and foremost, I should say that I'm a big advocate of mental health myself. I use mental health tools. I use mental health services. I'm educated in the area. I've struggled many times in my life and sometimes didn't have the resources, but in the last 3 or 4 years, I've had extra resources and I've learned a lot about it. So I'm quite comfortable having these types of conversations.
Right.
So that's where I'm at now. How I tailored my approach is, the way you look at this is, it's really interesting. Actually, this was super easy for me. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people, when you're having conversations with them about their work or how things are going, a lot of people are quite bottled up and they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't really want to say what's going on. And let's be honest, they don't have to. They don't have to tell you what's going on in their personal life. That's okay. But it's hard for someone to say, actually, I'm really having a hard time with other things and it's affecting my work.
Right.
So that'll usually come out in weird ways. They might get angry at RevOps, or they might get angry at marketing, or they might get angry that they're being questioned on their metrics or why they're always late. And when someone's angry and defensive, it's difficult to help. It's not that you don't want to help, it's just harder to understand and to empathize and to give them the tools they need. Whereas this person was so open and honest. I mean, we were having pretty in-depth conversations about their life, how it impacts their work, how it impacts their communication with other employees. And because we had that radical candor with each other emotionally, it was also easy for him to say, I don't like when you do this. This makes me feel this way. Right? It makes me feel this way. So I was actually able to be very real with this person right away, really quickly. And that helped me manage them. That helped me understand a lot of the struggles they were going through. And I could, let's, for those people out there who this is hard to understand, it's the same way as like doing a sales call. right? All we're trying to do on a sales call is we're trying to ask questions and get the honest answers. We ask second, third questions. Why is this important? Because we want the real details. We want your motivations. I want to know what makes your business tick. What makes you personally tick? What makes you think you're going to be successful? And if I can understand that, I can talk to you about my product in ways that'll make sense for you. Right. It's no different with a person, right? Except these are usually more personal issues as well. So yeah.
As a leader too, it also means that there's less pressure on you to be, because you can be vulnerable with this person as well. And there's that honest, transparent exchange between two people. I always like to say that the manager and the individual rep or the individual contributor is really like a vertical couple. And the vertical couple operates best when both the manager and the rep are operating in the present and when they understand each other. But as soon as someone gets depressed or as soon as someone gets a little anxious and that vertical couple breaks alignment, it's tough. Like it's really hard to understand each other like it is, whether it's with your partner or with a boyfriend or girlfriend or with a friend. When you don't share the same perspective and you're not both operating in the present, it's very, very hard to understand each other and problem solve real issues. And the longer that takes place, the more that's going to have an impact on sales performance.
And it's a really strong point that you just made right there, which is a very big part of my management style. As leaders, and the higher up you are, I get it. You need to seem invincible. You need to feel like Superman because everyone's asking you questions and everyone looks like, hey, if a VP gets on a sales call, people put down the phone and they listen. They're like, what's going to happen on this magical call?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a lot of pressure for leaders too. Like it is a lot of pressure, and I get it why it's hard for us to be emotionally vulnerable or talk about our weaknesses. You see people talk about it very vaguely, like I wasn't good at this and I improved, but really getting into personal stuff and things that impact you. Again, you don't have to be super personal with your life. You can be, but just being honest with your emotions and say, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. This is really hard for me. And, sometimes it's too hard and this is how I deal with it. Right. This is how it comes out. And this is how I overcome it. And I think even on this call, saying to whoever's going to see this, that I've gone through some pretty tough times in my career, in my personal life.
Right.
And I had to get help for that. That makes me feel uneasy, but because it makes me feel uneasy, I know that that's what needs to be said.
Yeah. Seek discomfort. It's embracing the anxiety and consistently pushing yourself into outside your comfort zone to have uncomfortable conversations. That's how we'll all grow and how we'll all get better. So I guess the last thing I'm really curious about is there's a lot that kind of went into this relationship and so many cool things that not only I've learned, but everyone watching this video can learn. But for you personally, as a leader and as a manager, what would you say your biggest learning experience was in this relationship with this rep?
Yeah, it's a really great question. This was something that I you kind of know, but it's hard to experience. And we say this a lot, but a high performing team isn't just about having people who are good at sales.
Right. That's so important.
There are other things like contributions that people on your team can make that may not be the direct deal closing that can actually make your team high performing. So, this person in the interview process, there was one other thing they did, which was, which really caught my attention. Because I knew he was so honest, he was so raw.
Yeah.
I knew he was being very serious when he told me this story. He said he struggled a lot in high school and he had to work 3 times harder to get a C versus his friends and his peers.
Wow.
And he was pretty emotional about it, but he was like, but that's what I'm going to do. I know I have to do it. I know that's what it takes for me to be at an acceptable level of performance. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do. So if someone will give me a chance, I want to prove that.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, like, well, you know what? Hey, no one's limited, and maybe this person will be a star one day. And I believe in this person's potential a lot. But he's new in sales, so like he's probably not going to come out of the gate as the top performer. Who knows? But I believe him when he says he's going to do this. And I think if he does this and pulls it off just to keep up with everybody, he's going to inspire the people around him. They're going to see how hard he works. They're going to see the honesty, the rawness of his emotions. Mm-hmm. And that's going to inspire people around him to want to work harder, to push harder, to believe that they can do more than they're already doing. And that is exactly what happened. Don't get me wrong, there were hard days too, but there were days where people would walk up to me in the office and be like, hey, by the way, this person, like, they really inspire me. Like, mm-hmm. honestly, like, I really like this person's energy and I love what they're bringing to it. And it's like, I would get random people soliciting me about the inspiration this person would bring, and sometimes before this person would bring to the office.
Yeah.
So it added an element of energy and rawness and emotional vulnerability and something that you just can't find that everywhere else, right? And this person made sales. They were good. They struggled the same way we thought they would, but they definitely kept up, and they definitely brought so much more to the team than just their sales. That I can honestly say everyone who was around this person was impacted, mostly in a positive way, throughout the tenure of them working there. So
I can only imagine, because it's just when you get like when our conversation started, when you get someone that's authentic and genuine and really embraces their vulnerabilities, it's infectious, because it's, especially in this digital world of social media and world of people burning out and overworking, it's really refreshing to find someone who is open like this, and it's infectious, it's attractive, and those kind of values really bring people together, and it's attractive to other people. So that's wicked, man. I really appreciate you reaching out and sharing this story. It's been so inspiring to hear about how this kind of relationship was built and developed, and just learning about a sales leader that is looking for more than just those 4 years of experiences or that perfect track record. Like, that's not what sales is all about. It's like you said, it's how do you put the right people together and understand the people on the team to achieve that high performance and work to build that community in that environment where everyone's supporting each other. So that's awesome, man. I don't want to take too much of your time since it is your birthday, but I appreciate you hopping on to share this experience and share this story with the different salespeople, sales leaders, and mental health advocates that are helping grow this Sales Health Alliance that we're building, this mental health movement. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time. And the last thing I'll say is, I think mental health is a hugely important part of moving forward in this industry. Like, sales as an industry is going to grow even more than it already is now. And adding mental health to part of the growth of it is going to build a really solid foundation for better sales practices, healthier teams, healthier business cultures, healthier overall revenue groups.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And, I think a lot of sales leaders are a little worried about mental health because, it doesn't have the word performance in it, or it doesn't have the word revenue in it, or a quota in it. And like, you feel like if you're too vulnerable, empathetic, like it leaves revenue, or like you're ignoring revenue. But when you really dig into it, it really actually is about performance. It's about finding how you can take a person and get them to their fullest potential. And how do you get a team to their fullest potential? And the old adage of take your emotions out of business, that's not real. That doesn't work, right? And if that's what you think, you're gonna have a really tough time when it comes to managing human beings and building teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to continue the conversation. I'm continually learning. It's an area that I will always be focusing on and always trying to get better at. But happy to have a conversation with anybody who also wants to talk about it and continue the learning path.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. I haven't checked out the career pages recently. I don't know if Moby to Go is hiring right now, but if you are looking for a job, I know this pandemic has been hard on everyone, so wouldn't hurt to drop Ryan a note to kind of just check in and see if his team's looking for people.
Yeah, stay in touch. We're going to be hiring pretty soon, so always happy to have a conversation with anybody who thinks they're interested in sales and emotional health, I guess.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks again for your time, and this has been great.
And take care, Jeff. Thanks a lot.